Good morning, ma'am. Namaskar.
Good morning, Sadhana. Good to see all of you.
Same here, ma'am. Same here. So we have quite a good number of faculty here
Yes,
who
I
will
can
be
see
attending,
there are 48 participants. Yes.
and there will be more, even more,
Okay.
within few minutes. And we are going to, start your session in a minute or two. And before that, I would like to, introduce my newer faculty members who are not knowing much about you. So again, good morning to all of you, and it is again a pleasure to have Dr. Gitanjali Padmanabhan ma'am here on this platform to enrich our knowledge on a very important topic, that is PG thesis. I would like to introduce. I would like to give brief introduction of Dr. Gitanjali. That Dr. Gitanjali Padmanabhan did her undergraduate and postgraduate training from JIPMER, Puducherry. She is the director of All India Institute of Medical Sciences, Bhubaneswar, and holds additional charge of AIIMS Guwahati. She is a pharmacologist and worked at World Health Organization SEARO New Delhi for a brief period and coordinated the Better Medicines for Children projects in India. Her area of interest is essential medicines and rational use of medicines and medical education. And one thing I would like to, tell to my faculty members that when I did this training for the first time, Madam was the coordinator and she was head of the Department of Medical Education at JIPMER. And it was a great experience that I had 10 days rigorous training on medical education. That was a unique experience which I had in Madam's leadership, and that time I really learned a lot. And I wish that the same training and same sort of content should be delivered, though the platform is different, but I hope that the faculty members will be definitely benefited with your knowledge. Thank you so much, ma'am. We invite you to start your session now.
Thank you, Sadhana. And I was some time back. I was looking at some photographs which when we came to AIIMS Patna in 2000. I don't know. It was I think 2 years before I joined here. So perhaps in 2014 or 15, when we came to AIIMS Patna to do the workshop. Myself,
It was
Dr.
15.
Kadambari, 2015, Jay Prakash Rajan and all that. And we had a great time. My thing would be that this time I thought it would be good if we spoke a little bit about thesis, because, the problems faculties face all in different colleges are the same. The commonalities are all there. And these are some of the problems which I faced as a young faculty member. And so therefore, I am going to share with you some of my own, kind of experience which we had in this thing. So I think it would be beneficial to everyone if we spoke a little bit about the thesis. So I thought instead of doing too much in one day, we will have something like we will do it over 3 weeks. So every day we'll have a biteable chunk about the thesis. And this is not about research methodology. I'm going to talk to you about how to choose a topic for a thesis. There will be two topics on, topic as well as research question kind of a thing today. And then from the next week, what we will do is we'll look at the major sections of the thesis book, okay, or how it should be written or what is expected to be written, so that it's a little more hands-on, because I know some of you might have already guided students, and so there will be a mix of experiences to whom I am talking. So if you feel that something I'm telling you already know, that's fine. But if you feel that is something which you want to know more, please feel free to ask. So my topic today is the first topic I'm going to talk to you is about how to choose a topic for a thesis. Now, if all of us feel like this, and I'm sure a lot of us will feel like this, you are not alone. Because this is what majority of the people feel, that, The head of the department calls you and says, okay, you are a guide, and you feel that, oh my God, I don't know. I mean, there is, how do I get the topic, and what do I read? Do I ask somebody and all that? So it's nothing new. So I have just two objectives for this session. First is that at the end of this, you will be able to list the steps that will help you identify and select a topic that can be done as an MD, MS, or a DMMCH thesis, depending on whether you belong to a specialty or super specialty. So all that I expect is that you will know what are the steps to go through in order to select a topic. The second thing is you should know what are the characteristics of a good research problem. So these are only my two objectives. And so I start with the question, why should research be a part of the postgraduate curriculum? I'm sure all of you have your own ideas what it is. These are some of the things which are generally said. That is, as a postgraduate student, a student needs to develop what is called a scientific attitude. That is, anything that is said, is this true? What is the evidence in favor of it? Can I add more to the evidence that is there? So this is a attitude. And so this is not something that will be, given like this. It takes its own time to develop. And so in the process of doing a thesis, he or she may develop that attitude. The second is critical assessment of literature. We all know that we are having an overload of literature which is being thrown at us. How does one make an assessment? What can I take from this to add to my clinical protocols? Or can I change something based on what is being said? How do I critically assess literature? That is, you need to know all about about the research methodology, a little bit about statistics, a little bit about how they interpret the results which are got and things like that. So this helps a student gain that knowledge. Publication. You know that whenever we go for, whether it is our APS or whether we go for an interview, you are asked how many publications do you have, what is your H index, and so on. So publications are now, they are the currency by which you are judged as an academician. You also get a chance to contribute to new knowledge. And there is enough evidence to show that researchers are better clinicians. So if you are a researcher, you also become a better clinician. There is enough evidence to prove that. Lastly, I'm saying this is a curricular requirement. If AIIMS partner has it in their curriculum, then it becomes a curricular requirement. So for all these reasons, we need to teach research to our postgraduate students. Okay, so what is the advantage of doing a thesis? Many times we've had, discussions. Is this the correct way of teaching research methodology? Doing. I believe that if you do something, then you get to learn it better, because doing is the best way you can learn something. So you get to learn research methodology because you will have to start writing your protocol. So right from the protocol upwards, you are going to learn this. Sometimes you get a chance to learn one topic in depth, and people do develop a lifelong passion for that subject. You can also, some residents learn special skills. It might be a kind of, if you are in psychiatry, you are doing a kind of a questionnaire, you might learn how to communicate. Your oral communication will be better. You might be in a position to do some molecular biology work, so you will learn these kind of skills. Research is about teamwork, so you get to know how to work as a team, and you realize that you have to work along with your laboratory staff or along with people in other departments, the nurses, I don't know, but depending on what kind of work you are, so you learn a little bit of teamwork. It also improves your written communication skills to a great extent because you are expected to write. So these are some of the advantages. Now, many of you will know what are the requirements to conduct research, but there are some basic requirements which we need. Sometimes we take it for granted, and sometimes we need to think about it a little more. The first is, if you are a student needs a competent guide. Okay. the guide, if you are a guide, you might say, I also need a competent student. Because if you are going to give a very mediocre student and a very complicated project, that student is not going to be able to do it. So you need both a competent guide. If you're a guide, you need a competent student, and you may or may not always get this, okay, depending on which side you are looking at. You need to have adequate number of patients and animals. And this is why we say that when you are giving a topic or choosing a topic for a postgraduate student, make sure that at the end of the data collection period, and that will be very short, it will probably be about a year. You are having follow-up, maximum it will be 1.5 years or 1 year and 8 months. So make sure that you get enough number of patients, or if it is an animal work, you have enough animals. So if you're going to select something which is very rare and you get, one patient in 2 months, please don't give those topics. You need to give time. The student needs to have time. As a guide, you also need to give yourself time to think about these things. There needs to be equipment, there needs to be expertise to run the equipment. Many times what we'll have an HPLC, but there won't be a technician, or no one will know how to, even run that kind of an equipment. Of course, you need consumables. So these are some of the things which you need. In addition, the institute has to see that there is an ethics committee, because approvals are needed. You need to have a good library, or at least have access to literature, so that your residents can search, faculty can search your library. You need to have the appropriate permissions to do it. Supposing you want to do it in some districts of your state, and the state has to give you permission to do it. It also needs a kind of supportive environment. I mean, if your departmental environment is not conducive to research, I would say that research will not prosper. So you will just have some naam ke vaste research which is being done. So these are some of the requirements which are needed. Now, so you may ask me, so how do you get a good idea for research? Now, this is nothing which is new or not talked about. In the year 2005, I wrote an editorial identifying a research problem. The problem is a problem. The things have not changed since that editorial, because I went back and read it when I was preparing for this. And the question remains, so how do you get a good idea for research? Many guides have no idea. Many students also have no idea. How do you get it? And things have not changed, because if you are going to look at a very mediocre type of research, there are enough ideas. But if you are looking to do something new, something novel, something which will be relevant to the region in which you are working, then you need to give it a little more thought. So what can you do to get a good idea for research? One of the things which you can do is brainstorm for ideas. Have people with similar, who are working in similar areas, talk to them, discuss some new ideas which are coming. And this is one of the very good ways in which you can get an idea. Because remember, you are only looking at an idea. You have not finalized anything about it. You are looking at the topic. You also need to be flexible. If this is not okay, can we work on this area kind of a thing? But what we don't do enough is we don't read enough, we don't search enough. And this is a big limitation, because all good ideas come only if you read other people's work, people who are working in the same area, same institution, other institutions. Unless you read, you will not get enough. And let me tell you, this is sadly lacking. Some people say, okay, when you get a good idea, write down a few keywords, go back, look at them, and do some kind of search, which is a good way of looking at it. You also need to choose a topic which interests you. If you choose a topic which is not very interesting to you personally, then you may not get a good idea, because you're just again going through the motions of doing research, and you need to understand the topic. So long time back, Doug Altman in BMJ wrote, we need less research, better research, and research done for the right reasons. So some people may ask me, doing research just because we want to train somebody, is this the right reason? That's actually a question which can be asked. And some of us don't believe it's the right reason, but whether we like it or not, this is as a part of a curricular requirement is there to stay, and therefore we better do it right. Okay. So, can I have some tips for getting a better idea for research? The first thing is you need to start thinking early. After the head of the department says, okay, you are the guide, it's far too late. So whenever you have time, start thinking. The next student I'm going to give this project. So you can always have 2 or 3 ideas in your mind long before you are given guideship. Look for potential gaps in knowledge, and you all know where you get these gaps. The last few lines of any research paper generally says further research in this area will be needed or something like that. So if you want to look for potential gaps, this is the short way of getting it. In research papers, you know that the last part of the discussion is generally where they identify and say where future research is. Now, one of the very good ways is to solve a problem you encounter. And I'll tell you about something which, one of the issues which I try to solve in my next slide. But solving a problem you encounter in your work, this will give you enormous satisfaction. Let me tell you. You can review sources for ideas. You know, a lot of these WHO reports, ICMR reports, Government of India reports, they are rich sources where you can get ideas. And of course, be ready. Sometimes you may want to change the topic as you progress through through your whole process. So I'm just giving you an example. See, when I was in JIPMER, I had just come back from WHO, and we were looking at I noticed that in the JIPMER epilepsy pediatric OPD, children with epilepsy were being prescribed adult dosage forms. So they were written a prescription, and the mothers were told that you split this tablet into 3 or 4 and give your child one of those split tablets, every day. So we saw prescriptions when we saw, can you see this? Phenytoin 100 milligrams, 1/6 HS for 2 weeks. So a mother was given one tablet and asked to break it or split it into 6 parts and give the child one part, at night. Similarly, here you can see 110 HS. Okay. So the prescriptions they were getting were fractions of an adult dosage. And why were we doing it? Because if 1 week supply of phenytoin cost about 6 rupees, if you bought the liquid formulation, that is the pediatric formulation, that was about 50 rupees. So there was a huge, almost 8 times cost involved. And naturally, as a government institution, we couldn't provide that kind of budget, because in JIPMER, we were giving all medications out for our patients that was free of cost. So we couldn't fit it into our budget. So for this reason, we were prescribing adult formulations for children. So this raised an issue. Do these children who were taking these adult formulations broken into this, were their epilepsy controlled? Or how much of this were they getting? So we did this study and we got 2 publications out of it. But what I'm saying is, at the end of it, I could go to the medical superintendent and say what we are doing is wrong. The children, the plasma levels of these anti-epileptics are not optimal and they are not getting controlled, probably because the mothers are not able to give these drugs properly, and therefore we need to start issuing liquid formulations or pediatric formulations of these anti-epileptic drugs. So why I'm telling you this is, one, we wanted to solve this problem of a large number of children with epilepsy who were coming to our OPD, getting the medicines free of cost. They were not being properly or adequately managed. Okay? So what are the sources of ideas for research? One is knowledge and experience of peers. If you have a very knowledgeable senior in your department or even peers, this is a very rich thing, because you can throw ideas and get some good ideas. Of course, if you have a chance to discuss with experts, there's nothing like it. I already told you about reports in journals or reports in, these organizations which come out with very good reports. You you need to also think about the student's interest. Sometimes a student may be interested in doing in a particular area. You need to think about that. And then, of course, there is also this chance or luck. So these all will provide you some ideas for research. So now I'm going to break it down into a very simple way of how to choose a topic. The whole number of steps are 6, but I'm going to break it down into the first 3 steps. So first we will look at the first 3 steps. So the first step is that you choose any topic. The second step is you need to be a little more specific. And the third step is to be a lot more specific. So there are very 3 simple steps. I'm not saying this is the only way of choosing a topic, but this is one way of looking how to choose the topic. Okay. So choose any topic. That's the first step. Now, when you say choose any topic, you can't choose topics like this: neuroanatomy, cancer, interventional radiology, immunology, rheumatology. These are not topics. These by in itself, I will call a subject. Okay. So don't say, madam has told to choose a topic, cancer. My topic I'm choosing is cancer. Cancer is not a topic. It's too large. So you will need to narrow it down a little more. Okay. So don't choose these kind of broad topics, but you might want to choose something like this, osteoarthritis or brachytherapy or germ cell tumors or basal ganglia, whatever. So these I would consider as a topic. Okay. And it's just to put in perspective. So let me illustrate how you will do it with an example. So to choose a topic, I will choose something like pain. Do you agree? I think pain, you can agree, is a topic. Now, how do you be a little more specific? I will look at post-operative pain. So pain, there are a whole lot of different types of pain, referred pain, neuralgias, this, everything. But for my purpose, I would like to look at post-operative pain. So I'm being a little more specific about the pain topic which I am choosing. Okay. So I am choosing post-operative pain. How do you be a lot more specific? In post-operative pain, I want to look at the management of post-operative. So now, in this whole area of choosing the topic, we start with any topic. We are a little more specific where we go on to post-operative pain. And we are a little more specific or a lot more specific by saying management of post-operative pain. So post-operative pain, there are various other aspects, but you want to only focus on management of post-operative pain. So do you get me when I say that in 3 simple steps, you can be a little more closer to choosing a topic. Okay. So now we'll look at the other 3 steps. One of the things are, don't think that as soon as you write it down, you are, the first 3 steps are over. You need to keep on doing this, the first 3 steps, until you feel, yeah, okay, this is some area in which probably I can select a topic. So don't hesitate to repeat this any number of times, doing a little bit of reading as you go. So this is a task I'm giving you. This you should do after this today after 12:30, maybe in the evening, you're sitting having a cup of tea. Please try to do this 3 processes. Okay. So now let's go on to the other. How do you narrow? Now 3 steps we have gone. We have reached the third step, which is management of post-operative pain. From here, how do we go further? So what is the 4th step? To expand on 1 or 2 words by making them more specific. So here we are starting with management of post-operative pain. So what are the words I can probably expand? I will expand on management, and I will also expand on post-operative pain. So if I expand on 1 or 2 of these words and make it a little more specific, I may come to something like this. What is the medical management, or what is the management with drugs of immediate post-operative pain? So I have made post-operative pain a little more specific by saying immediate post-op pain. I have made management a little more specific by saying medical management, or giving management using drugs. It could be, I might think of using acupuncture. I might think of using some hypnotherapy or whatever it is. But here I am looking at using drugs. Are you clear? So this is the fourth step. That is, you expand on what you have got by making it a little more specific. Expand one or two words and make it a little more specific. So that's the fourth step. What's the fifth step? The fifth step is, now we have reached here. At the end of the fourth step, we are here. The fifth step is that you turn this into a complete sentence. Now, if I'm going to make this medical management of immediate postoperative pain into a sentence, I will need to do a little bit of literature search, because this is not a sentence. This is just we have thrown a few words in this. So I want to make it into a sentence. I have to do a little more literature search. What is that? I do some search and I find that, okay, in the medical management of pain, immediate postoperative pain, I find that the use of transdermal use of analgesics, that is not well studied. There are a lot of gaps in that. So I will turn it into a sentence by saying transdermal use of analgesics in the management of immediate postoperative pain is not well studied. So I have turned this one into a sentence, complete sentence, after finding out that there are some gaps. Is that clear? Yes. So this is the fifth time. So now we are coming to the last step. So once you have done this and you have turned whatever you started, we started with pain, and in fifth step, we have reached here. Okay, we have a complete sentence by the fifth step. Now we need to do the last one, and you make this sentence, what you have, as arguable and precise as possible. So this is your sentence. Now you are making it a little argumentative. That means, can you have a kind of comparison? No, can you have it a little more precise? So my thing is, I would say transdermal opioids. Now here we are saying transdermal use of analgesics. But here now I have managed to even document which group of drugs I'm going to use. So here I will say transdermal opioids may be better than other analgesics. So people may be using paracetamol, I don't know, NSAIDs they might be using in the management of immediate postoperative pain. Again, I am saying after abdominal surgery. So I'm not looking at other types of surgery. I am looking at abdominal surgery. So I'm making it as arguable and precise as possible by saying, okay, I am looking at one group of drugs and I think it is better than the other analgesics which they are using. And I am telling that this will be in the immediate management of immediate postoperative pain after abdominal surgery. I'm not talking of neurosurgery or, limb surgery, vascular surgery. I'm not talking of. So in 6 steps, we have what is probably a topic which you can use. So this is the topic which you reach after 6 steps. And remember, this is not the title. Don't think that you have reached the title of the project. This is not a hypothesis. So in a way, it resembles a hypothesis. It's not a research question. It's not a thesis statement. All that you have done at the end of this 6 step is hit upon something which is probably a good topic which you can work with. So these are the 6 steps which I usually try to tell my residents. If somebody will come and say, Madam, I want to work on cancer. And I tell them, okay, here, I tell the residents, these are the 6 steps. Come, let's try and work on it and see whether we can come to a topic which can be used. So the 6 steps to selecting a topic: choose any topic, be a little more specific, be a lot more specific. Once you have got something which is a lot more specific, can I expand on 1 or 2 words by making them more specific? Then I turn it into a complete sentence. And lastly, I make the sentence as arguable and as precise as possible. So these are the 6 steps in selecting a topic. If there is anyone who wants to ask me something, I would rather stop here before I complete my topic.
Ma'am, I have a question.
Yeah, please.
So, the problem is happening nowadays with this COVID situation coming up, that we did the topics which, at least in surgical departments, I think all the departments, that they're having this acute shortage of sample size. So now once we have given the topic, we are struggling with the batch which has been caught up in COVID as to what to do now. So,
So Kranti, no, you are speaking? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
So
ma'am.
Kranti, we had the same thing. When we started, we had, had given students with, they had to estimate the sample size according to the formula and all that. But because of COVID, the numbers are not there. So what we did is we brought out we sat, we discussed, and we came out with a advisory saying that in case you are not able to complete your sample size, to mention it. So supposing say your sample size is 50 and you have managed to do only 30, it is okay. You write your dissertation with 30 and there you say that because of COVID, the sample size of 50 could not be this thing because of the various reasons. And this is in with the advisory given by the Dean's office. So we issued this kind of an advisory. And when we are sending it to the external examiners also, we are sending this advisory saying that though the sample size was calculated, if it has not been this thing, we are not going to penalize them. With whatever available data they have done the, what shall I say, the final analysis.
Okay.
So this is something which is accepted. I think even the National Medical Council has come out with this advisory now. So you can look at that, though we are not with this thing, but we can give our own thing. If you want, I can you can get in touch with somebody here and they can send what we have sent. You can see that and do something on similar lines. Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you.
Any other issues you want to raise?
Yeah, ma'am, may I ask a question, ma'am?
Yes, please.
Yeah, ma'am, you told that solving a issue is the best way to giving a thesis. We are doing it by QI projects. So, but they are small projects. Is it sustainable to continue it for 2 years and make it a PG thesis, ma'am?
See, I didn't say solving is the best. It is one of the things. It gives me great satisfaction because I think we are addressing some problems which we are facing. What project? What did you say? QI? What is that?
It's a quality improvement. That's a like
Okay.
we see some gaps and then we try to fill the gaps with some initiatives, and then we see whether we have reached our milestones or not.
Yeah. So there's nothing wrong. I mean, because I have given thesis in medication errors. We have done things with improving prescribing and so on. So there's nothing wrong in that. But it should be sufficient enough to call a thesis. Okay, I just complete it and we can come back to you because that might answer some of your question. Okay. Now here we are only here. We have only selected the topic. We have not even gone to our research question. So this will become more and more narrow. So remember where we are is we are only still here at the upper part of this kind of triangle. Okay. So we are in a very broad area. Now, what we call a good research problem, the criteria, one is it should be feasible. As I told you, we should have enough cases, we should have enough expertise, money, time, everything to do it. It should also be interesting. It should be novel. It should be ethical, and it should be relevant. What do you mean by relevant? Will it advance knowledge? Will it change some policy or practice guidelines? Will it guide future research? Is it relevant to our area? I mean, we can't do something on, sleeping sickness or something which is not here at all. So these are generally, this finer criteria is generally a guiding principle. Okay. Certainly you can't do unethical work. It is better to do novel research because if something has already been done, why do you want to reinvent the wheel? So these are some of the things which we ask when we are selecting a good research problem, some criteria. But there are issues in topic selection. One is it is not being true to the discipline. I'll give you an example. There was a student who was from anatomy, and his thesis was something on surgery of inguinal hernia. So the student actually, always was in the surgery department. Somebody else did the surgery, and he was doing something which later on the examiner said this is not anatomy, because he is finding out what is the length of surgery, and the kind of topic which was chosen. The examiners felt it was not being true to his discipline. So the question which I think Dr. Chandramohan raised, if you find that it is true to your discipline, please go ahead and do it. There is no harm as long as you can justify doing it. Now, don't try to repeat work done somewhere. This has been done in USA. Can we do it here? Because unless you can, sometimes you can justify anything. So this way, the student is not going to learn research methodology, and don't choose too trivial a topic. I think this is another thing which he was asking. Can we have something which we can do it for 2 years? The topic should be sufficient to be covered in the time which you are giving, not so big that it is exhausting, not so small that it can be given as a short studentship, this STS projects which can be done in 2 months. So you need to know as a guide where this stands. I think that will probably answer your question. The 3 key features of a good research problem: it should be significant, it should be feasible, it should be original. There's some problems with idea versus feasibility.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes, please. Yes.
Ma'am, I'm Dr. Devendu from Department of Medicine. Just want to re-emphasize that you said that these should not be repeated.
Yeah, I did.
What does it exactly means? Ki
It
agar
means that, okay, let me tell you. Let me tell you, if something is being done, something was done in, let's say, in northern India, you want to see whether you can do it in eastern India.
Okay.
And the thing is, you say that, okay, because this place is very humid or not humid, this place the education level of people are much less, or crowding is there or something like that. So this way, what happens is you give a student a written document and say, let's do it here. This is what I say should not be done. Without, identifying the gaps, addressing some of the gaps, changing the, protocol so that you have a better protocol. Simply reinventing the wheel is not good research. Is that okay?
But ma'am, there are certain places, that's as we are working in Bihar, there are lots of data which is missing from this part of country. Some basic data also. Is very, very less. So for example, that I want to give my PG a topic of spectrum of resistance in the Acinetobacter in my ICU. Then I come to know that I am not aware of what is the healthcare associated infection in my hospital too. जब मुझे उसका basic data ही नहीं पता है, then how can I go forward for a question that Acinetobacter की मैं उसकी resistance profile देखूं? So for that, I chosen a recent topic that how to HAI surveillance as a topic for my thesis topic for my PG. Is it okay, or I made a mistake?
See, that's the thing. So as I said, if it is relevant, or if you're solving a problem in your institution or in the place where you are working, it's still fine. But my thing is, don't simply try to, what shall I say, copy what somebody else has done. So you have a problem, you need to find answers to this problem, go ahead and do. 100 people might have done the same thing before, but that doesn't mean that you simply copy the way they have done it. You might want to improve on their methodology.
Yeah.
You might want to add things which they have not done. So it's up to you. I'm not saying it is wrong, but I'm saying that, probably what I will do is I will do what you have said as a, faculty intramural grant or something like that. And then for my student, I will go one step further. I don't know, but that is just my way of thinking. Okay.
Ma'am,
I wish to add one thing to this question. The way Madam has listed that there are certain gaps, Dr. Devendu has that the data is missing. So keeping that as a background that the data is not available, he is creating it. I mean, that way it can be justified. The research can be justified that way. This is my opinion about it.
ma'am,
Yes, please.
Dr. Pradeep here.
Yes, Pradeep.
So, if I think if the study is novel and it has been done for in few centers only, so can't we do the same thing or changing a bit methodology so that we can validate those studies also for the purpose of validation?
See, that's what I'm saying. See, nobody is stopping you from doing anything. But the question is, how lazy are you? See, in the name of validation, if you ask a student to do something which has already been done, he's not going to learn anything. Already the literature search is done. Whatever has been published, he will take the same, from the list of references, he will take the same references. He will not know how to search for references. He will not actually plan the methodology. What the data has been analyzed, so he will use the same. So the idea, please remember, the idea why we are asking students to do research is so that they learn how to do research. This, what you are saying, can be easily done by simply sitting and reading something. So in the name of validation, if you are going to spend a lot of money, which at the end you know that it's going to be the same, I don't think it is a little justified. But nothing is preventing. See, everyone does. That is what I'm saying. Why are we doing so much of research? At the end of it, you must be able to publish. So if at the end of what you have done, you ask the student to do it, and then if you are not able to publish it, again, it is going to be a problem. Because I don't see any good journals who are saying that we have done this in order to validate this. I don't see any good journals publishing it. So it's a waste of your time also. Okay.
Thank you.
Right. So then you need to have time. Some of these things we have already spoken. But one thing is this last thing, issues concerning department. Some departments are totally closed for doing new things. They will say, no, don't do this. Do something which can be done. So when they say do something which can be done, it means don't, take on challenging topics. And I think this is very wrong. So as heads of the departments, they should continue to encourage research, and we must keep on raising the bar. So there are some departments which will be notorious. I mean, I know because working in JIPMA for such a long time, there are heads of the department who won't allow you to work after 5 o'clock. If you want to work after 5 o'clock, you have to get permission, but that's okay. Right? So you need to be able to have an environment which is nourishing research. So this is a bit of a confusing slide, but I'll take it easy. On the x-axis, if you have relevance to immediate application, okay, on the x-axis, it goes from low to high. Okay, low is on your left and high is on your right. And if you plot on your y-axis, relevance to advancement of knowledge. So immediate application versus relevance to advancement of knowledge, you will get 4 quadrants, which are named Dahl, Pasteur, and Curie quadrant if you go anti-clockwise. And of course, this has been published long back. This Dahl quadrant, so the yellow quadrant is called Pasteur quadrant, because this is basic research, like what Louis Pasteur did. He kept asking, why should this milk curdle? What can we learn from this? What are these? He kept asking questions which were leading to important practical questions. So this is basic research, but you use it to address important practical questions. You have this Curie quadrant where people don't bother about what its applications are. So if you look at many of our discoveries, like the discovery which Madame Curie made, they just did pure basic research because that's what motivated them. Later on, there were a lot of relevance which came out, like how even things like PCR and, Madame Curie's own experiments, later on the relevance came. But when they did it, it was pure basic research. In the West, this is the quadrant which gets maximum funding. Dahl quadrant is Richard Dahl, who did all the basic things along with in UK to show that to show that smoking causes lung cancer. So he did pure applied research. Is there a connection? Is there an association between smoking and cancer? So that is what it is called. So generally we try to work in this area that is relevant to us. But this area too is a good area to work in. Please don't think of working in this area. And that is why I'm saying, if you want to do a validation of something, it almost comes into this waste quadrant, because what is the relevance? Already somebody has worked on it and said it doesn't have an application or whatever it is. So unless you are able to get some good justification, don't waste time working here. That is what I wanted to say. This is a paper from the Lancet. If you have time, you please read that. So this is what I was saying. So if you have done a literature search and found that this drug was not tested on hippopotamus and will be the first, that kind of novelty, it's of no use, right? So this is just a cartoon just to make sure that this should not be the kind of novelty we are working. So what is a bad topic for thesis? One which is very trivial, can be answered by a quick search of literature. You know the answer. Don't select those kind of topics. If you don't have the infrastructure or logistics, don't choose such a topic. For example, somebody might say, yes, we are getting a PET-CT in the next 3 months. Let us choose a topic on PET-CT. Please don't. If you are choosing a topic for thesis, make sure that you have all the infrastructure already in your department. We are a government institution. We don't know how late it will come. And then we should not be overly ambitious in giving students huge topics which they may not be able to address. And I would also say that don't give students a systemic review or a meta-analysis. That is not what they should be doing for a thesis. Okay. So I'll conclude by saying identifying a thesis topic is probably, to me, most difficult part of the research process, because the success or failure depends on the selection. And then you need to think of the two things: local regional needs, originality, and feasibility. These are the 3 key features you must keep in touch. And you can have a simple 6-step process which will help you choose or narrow down a topic to this. So that's my this thing. This I have done a large amount of the content is from this book. This is a book which I wrote long back. So you have better books now, many more books and better than this, but you will find that in this book, we have written that it is dedicated to all postgraduates who have suffered at the hands of incompetent guides, and all guides who are frustrated by the insincerity of their students. So it's both ways. Sometimes students are frustrated by incompetent guides and guides are frustrated by bad students. But I think that, we can all get over this. And one of the hidden agenda for for my talks are that we can all of us become, very competent guides. So that's what I would like to distinguish. So thank you. This ends my first topic. If there is anything, I will be happy to answer questions. Yeah. Yes,
Ma'am,
please.
I have a question. Can I ask?
Yeah, please do.
Okay, ma'am. It was a nice celebration, ma'am.
Thanks, Veena. Yeah.
I just wanted to know, ma'am, if the learner is also involved equally in choosing his or her topic, because they might have some ideas after searching the literature, and they also can suggest the probable topics. So shall we take it?
Yes, that's a very good question. I think if you can involve the learner, because when we are looking at adult learners, one of the things are that we should bring in, they should feel that this is something which I want to work in. So definitely you can include their ideas, but they may not know whether the feasibility part, no? See, like whether you have enough cases, whether you have the equipment, the methodology, they may not know. So yes, you should include the learners because after all, it is their thesis. If they are involved in it, in selecting the topic, yes, it is a win-win situation. And you are fine with it, I think it's a win-win situation.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any other questions? Any other questions?
Good morning, ma'am. This is Ravi Kirti from General Medicine.
Yes, Ravi. Yeah.
Ma'am, often I see a tendency to, apart from the precise research question that one intends to answer, there's always a tendency or often a tendency to include a few more things as secondary objectives. So while I'm doing this, I might as well collect this data. And that sometimes, to me, it looks as if we are diluting the research question. So is that something to be encouraged or should we discourage it?
I think you should discourage it because that will be discussed in my next talk. But I think you're right. It should be discouraged. See, this happens to all of us. It has happened to me. Initially, if we are doing this study, we should have 10 objectives and 10 secondary objectives because with this money, with the effort, if we are doing this, a little more we can do, And that's where you start making the major mistakes because if you look at many of the big studies which people do abroad, their focus is very, very narrow. Because what we forget is that we are asking a question which we are trying to answer in this sample of people we have drawn out. And then we are trying to, of course, extrapolate to the general population. Now, if you start off diluting, too much at the beginning, you end up not having precise answers to any of the questions you raise. So I am fully agreeable that you should choose a very narrow context, stick to it. No matter how much people will say, you could have studied this. Why don't you look at this also? People will do that. But I think you shouldn't allow that to happen.
Thank you.
So can I go to my next talk?
Hello, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Ma'am, just one question, Dr.
Yes,
Shruti,
yeah.
Pharmacology.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Ma'am, this was the first time I had a PG under me. So she just came to me and I was actually literally wondering where I should begin with. So I had these preconceptions in my mind regarding the topics that I wanted. So when that happens, that your student is standing in front of you, and among all the various things that you just explained to us very wonderfully regarding, the basis that should form a research topic. So should I just tell her that go back and look at your areas of interest, or should I just, very subtly direct her towards something that I already know that maybe this could form a research topic for her? Should I just let her explore a bit?
So let me tell you that if a student is coming, just after internship, most of them don't have any idea about what could be a good area. And if you already have some work in that area and you want to gently nudge her on that, go ahead and do it.
Yes.
When I was in JIPMER, I used to tell, I was never fond of molecular pharmacology. So I used to tell students, this is one area I'm not going to work on because this is, so if you want to work on this area, don't choose me as a guide. Go to somebody else. And my students, I used to tell them, we will do only this. We will work on this area because this is my area of interest. Similarly, my colleague, Dr. Ravindran, who is now Dean Research in JIPMER, he used to tell, I will do only animal work. So if you are squeamish about touching animals, injecting animals, I'm not going to be your guide. So we used to have, we could get away with it because at that time we were probably fairly senior. But when you are at a junior level, you probably can't throw your weight around that much. But I would strongly recommend that you tell the student, this is my area of research, my area of interest, and let's come and find a topic which will be in that thing. So you don't have to tell her, give her an answer at the same time. You could do it over many cups of coffee.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. So it has to be a wonderful balance as far as I understand.
Sure.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. So can we start the next talk? Because it's, yeah.
Yes, ma'am. The next talk will be on 7th of August.
No,
And
no.
the
I
same
have one
time.
more topic. Sadhana, I
Okay,
have
today.
two topics today.
Okay, sure, madam.
Yes.
I thought you were talking about next.
No, you
We
must go
will.
back and read what I have said. I have two topics.
Okay.
For,
I'm so sorry. Please go ahead.
yeah. So the second talk for today is, so the first one was on identifying a research topic, and the second one is on framing the research question, on writing a good hypothesis, and what are SMART objectives. Okay. So let me take you through this. So I'm going to talk of these three things: hypothesis, definition, what are the types, characteristics. Similarly, research question, what are the qualities of a good research question, what are its components, and SMART objectives. So this is important because if you have a good research topic, if you're not able to frame a good hypothesis, a research question, and the SMART objectives, you're not going to get a good protocol. So I thought this would be very much needed. So what is a hypothesis? Hypothesis is nothing but an idea or a statement which is based on known, but it has not been proved yet. The famous thing with the apple fell, it must have fallen so many times on so many people's heads, but when it fell on Isaac Newton's head, then he knew that he had to go ahead. There was a hypothesis. These apples kept falling from top. He has noticed it, but now he needs to prove it by having a theory to support it. So it's conceived as an assumption which merits consideration, and it needs to be tested against available empirical evidence. So here you have a hypothesis, you need to test it. Okay? So to test it, you need to collect some evidence and see whether this hypothesis is correct or not. That is all what a hypothesis is. It is a statement of the relationship between two or more variables. I'm not going into a lot of research methodology. This you can read up a little later. So you need to know that it is a relationship between two or more variables. So what are the types of hypotheses? There are 13 different types, and I'm not going to go into all of that. You can read up. There's a lot of literature available, but basically all of us would have come across this null hypothesis, which our statistics friends are very fond of. Okay, this null hypothesis, which generally states that there is no difference between two variables, but we generally go for this, what is called an alternative hypothesis, or a research hypothesis is what we usually follow. Now, null hypothesis predicts that there is no difference between the two test variables. And what we do is we say that we have a statistical test which will reject this null hypothesis and say, yes, one is better than the other. The test group is better than the control group, or whatever it is. So this is throwing open what is a hypothesis. But there are certain characteristics, because when you are writing a protocol, you may need to write a hypothesis. So a good hypothesis will provide direction. It should be testable. It should state the expected relationship between the variables and make a clear prediction. Okay, so you have two variables. What is the expected relationship? Does this cause this? Or is this better than this? You need to make a prediction, and it should be brief and clear. Like we always say, we can say hundreds of things and then say it should be brief and clear. But anyway, so let me give you this is a hypothesis. If you apply application of local cold compressors are superior to application of heat in the immediate management of ankle sprain. So this is a hypothesis which somebody had written in their protocol. Now, does it provide direction? Yes. What is the direction it provides? It says that if you apply local cold compressors, it is better than applying heat, isn't it? So what is the direction? It says this cold compressors are better than heat. Can it be tested? Of course, it can be tested. You take a group with ankle sprain. Some you give cold compressors, some you give warm heat, and then say which one get better. Does it state the relationship between variables? and make a clear prediction. Yes, what are the variables? The application of heat or cold and the pain, or how people with ankle sprain become better. So management of the sprain. So there is a clear relationship between the variables and there is a clear prediction. What is the prediction? The prediction is that local cold compresses are superior to application of heat. Is it brief and clear? Of course it is. So here you have an example of a very good hypothesis. Okay? This is how a hypothesis needs to be written. Now you might ask me, do all studies start with a hypothesis? Do I have to write a hypothesis for each and every study? The answer is no. Because many times when we do observational studies, we don't have a hypothesis. At the end of our study, we might end up giving a hypothesis. So exploratory studies or qualitative research may not start with a hypothesis. And some of the observational studies also need not start with a hypothesis. But you might formulate a hypothesis at the end of an observational study. So this is one of the things. So another task, I gave you one task. One is to make a topic, select a topic. This is the second task I'm giving you. With all these things, please make a hypothesis and test for yourself. So we finish with hypothesis. So I'm coming to research question. How do you write what is a research question? It's a huge definition. It is clear, it is concise, it is focused, just the way we described a hypothesis. But we also need to say that it should be complex and arguable. It is not a simple yes or no. A research question cannot be very simple. So it is a complex and arguable question that can be challenged, examined, and analyzed to provide useful information. So this is the definition of a research question. So in one way of looking at it is a hypothesis in a question form. In fact, you have hypothesis which can be written in a question as a research question. So this is the hypothesis which we worked with previously, isn't it? Application of local cold compresses are superior to the application of heat in the immediate management of ankle sprain. How will I change this into a research question? Are application of local cold compresses superior to the application of heat in the immediate management of ankle sprain? So you simply turn a hypothesis into a research question. That's all. As simple as that. Now you might ask me, why do we need a research question, or should we always start with a research question? It's a good thing to start with a research question. Every study, before you start research, you should have a very clear question in your mind. This is essential. It helps you keep your work on track, and then you finally have a good paper, because no matter how good, what wonderful work you have done, if you don't have a good research question, you will have a bad design and therefore you won't be able to publish. So the idea of us having a good research question is because only if you have a good research question in the first place, you will be able to publish it. Okay? So what are the qualities? It should be well stated, narrow focus, all these things we already spoke about. It should be testable, it should not pose an ethical problem. Similar to our finer, when we had this research criteria, that finer criteria had something similar to that. So the qualities of a good research question also are similar to the finer criteria, because it is essential. This is the first step to a successful publication. See, whenever you do thesis, please think that at the end of it, you have to publish it. If you're not going to publish it, it's not worth doing the research. So get or identify a topic and go through with a protocol which you can publish. Okay. So you need to begin with the end in sight, and the end is publication, not the final signing of the thesis or the student passing. So what are the components? Many of you will know this already. It is usually called a PICOT or P-I-C-O-T, PICOT, whatever you want to call it. Stands for population. I stands for intervention or the exposure, can be E. C stands for the comparator or the control, O for the outcome, and T time. If you have a research question with all these components, you have a fantastic research question. That's all. So whenever you have a research question, run it through this and see whether this fulfills. Of course, sometimes you might not have all the components of it. It doesn't matter. But at least you should have 3 or 4 of this. Okay? Now, so let me go back to my example. So this was the research question which we came out with. Our application of local coal compressors superior to application of heat in the immediate management of ankle sprain. So what is the population? Population are the people, patients with acute ankle sprain. So that is P is taken care of in your research question. Now we'll come to I. What is the intervention in this? Intervention will be the application of local coal compressors. So therefore, I is also taken care of. What is C? C is the comparator. What is the comparator to this? Obviously, because we are used to applying heat. So that is the comparator or the comparison. Okay. So C is also taken care of. What is O? O is the outcome. What are we expecting as outcome? We are expecting it to be superior. That means we are expecting pain to be gone quickly, or the pain effectively reduced, something like that. So the outcome we are expecting to be superior to the application of heat. And what is the time? Here we are saying in the immediate management of ankle sprain. So we are not looking to manage ankle sprain, after 1 day or 2 days, immediately. So all these are there in this research question. Okay. So once more to reinforce this, among people with specific characteristics defining the target population, that is your P, does a particular intervention, that is the I, in comparison to a specific alternative intervention, usual care or placebo. So the comparator can be another intervention, it can be usual care, or it can be a placebo, result in altered outcomes, that is the O, in the specified time. So this was an example which was given in this paper. I simply copied it. Among people in the subacute phase of stroke. So the population are people who are in the subacute phase of stroke. There's a moderate or high degree of depressive symptomatology. So the exposure here, which they are talking of, is symptomatology. That is, whether they have a moderate or a high degree of depressive symptomatology, that is the people who are the exposure or your intervention group. In comparison to a low degree, that is low degree of symptomatology, depressive symptomatology, that is a comparator group, predict community participation. The outcome is, can these people participate in the community at 6 months post-stroke? So that is the, so this is an example of a research question. This is the breakdown of the different components of the research question. So please, whenever you are writing a research question, quickly go through this PICOT and you will know whether it is a well-written. Generally, if you see meta-analysis or research, systematic reviews, they'll all have a good question. So what are the common errors? One is you're not very clear about the parameter which links the exposure and outcome. The question is so trivial, nobody cares whether you answer it or not. Sometimes what happens is you have data and you try to fit a research question to this. This is a bad way of doing research. Always have a research question, collect data to fit or to answer that research question. There is also something called data dredging. That is, if you have so many parameters and then simply try to, have a question which can answer this, you will keep on doing, analysis, so that somewhere some P becomes significant. And a simple yes or no question, we already spoke about it. These are common errors in formulating research questions. So another homework for you is to frame a research question. When I come to the last part of my talk, I've gone already, I think, 5 minutes overboard. So the objectives how to frame a good objective. And this is critical because unless you have good research objectives, you will not have a good thesis. So in all your thesis, there is a objective section. So you please make sure you write your objectives. So this summarizes what is to be achieved by the study. They help avoid unnecessary data collection. This is exactly what Ravi Kirti asked me. Because if you are very clear on your objectives, you don't have to collect all this unnecessary data. It facilitates the development of research methodology, which is very important. If your methodology is not correct, most papers don't get accepted. And last, it specifies what, where, and how you are going to do your whole project. So therefore, objectives are extremely important. Now, one of the things are you need to list few objectives that can answer your research question. So go back to your research question and frame your objectives. The primary objectives will address the main research question. Secondary objectives to address additional information related to the main objectives. Okay? Keep the number as less as possible. One primary, I don't think you should have more than one. At the most, you can have two. Generally have one primary objective, one or two secondary objectives, and that should be okay. Objectives should also be SMART. So as they say, too many cooks spoil the broth or spoil the soup. Just like that, too many objectives definitely spoil a research project. So have only one or two primary objectives, one or two secondary objectives, and the objectives should be SMART. So the next thing is, let's come to what are the SMART objectives. SMART objectives, S is specific, M is measurable, A is attainable, R is relevant, and T is time bound. So these are the SMART objectives. If an objective has all these what shall I say, attributes, it will be a good objective. Specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. So some examples of bad objectives: to study the effect of atenolol in heart patients. It is terribly vague, and words like to study and all that don't make much sense. To discuss the role of stress in high blood pressure. To investigate the nature of herbal medicines in asthma. See, we are very fond of this pompous words, like to investigate, to discuss, and all that. And these are all examples of bad objectives. So please don't, if you have objectives like that, try to turn them into SMART objectives. So we'll go back to this. So this is our research question. And we are going to make this into a SMART objective. How are we going to turn this? This will be the way we turn this research question into our SMART objective. To compare the efficacy of application of cold compresses versus the application of hot compresses in reducing the pain to 50% of its original intensity within 5 minutes in patients with acute ankle sprain. So this was a question, and now you made it into what is called a SMART objective. Let's see why I call it a SMART objective. Okay. So is it specific? Yes, it's very specific, right? What are we trying to do? We are trying to reduce the pain in patients who are having acute ankle sprain by using cold compresses. So it's extremely specific. Is it measurable? Yes. Why is it measurable? Because you can measure the amount of pain, okay, before and after, and in two groups. One group which is using hot compresses, one group which is using cold compresses. Is it attainable? Yes, it can easily be done. Is it relevant? Yes, this is relevant because in the management of acute sprain, this is an extremely relevant kind of work which you can do. Is it time bound? Yes. Why am I saying time bound? Because we are talking of reduction in the original intensity of pain within 5 minutes. Okay. Now, if you look at this specific, not specific, this is a very unspecific thing. If I say one of the objectives are to encourage mothers to come for antenatal care, it is very non-specific. How do I make it specific? I'll say that we need to increase registration antenatal care clinic in the primary health center. So now we are having a specific thing. Registration at the antenatal care clinic in the primary health center means that we have encouraged mothers to come for antenatal care. Increase attendance in antenatal care clinic is not very measurable, because what is it? Increased attendance means what? So if you say increase attendance in the antenatal care clinic by 15%, now you are being, this is something which is measurable. So you are making your objective measurable by saying by how much I will increase the attendance, by 15% or 20%. It's up to you to identify how much. Now, again, if I say I will increase attendance in the antenatal care clinic by 15% within 10 days, this is not achievable. You and I know we can't achieve it. But if I say within 3 months, then it becomes achievable. So you need to make your objectives achievable. And then again, if I say this, it's not time bound, but if I say within 3 months, I will make this happen, again, it is time bound. So you're making your objective a little more specific. So this is what is meant by this SMART, in order to make your objective much more, smarter. So you prepare, but one thing is it does take time. You need to edit multiple times. But once you have done it, it makes planning the study very easy. And when you are writing the thesis, why does it help? When you are writing the thesis, check whether your objectives match with the conclusions. So if your objectives match with the conclusions, your work is done. So this is one of the advantages of having SMART. So your homework is to frame a research question, frame a PICO question, and to write one SMART objective, which is coming up. Yeah, so I have done, and I will be happy now to answer any questions, or if you are tired, that's fine with me. Yes, please. I am done my session.
We are not at all tired. We really enjoyed this session, and I hope all the faculty members who have attended it have really, clarified their concept about how the topics should be selected, how the research becomes relevant. All these facts have been really very well conveyed by Dr. Geetanjali. I'm really so happy, and I totally enjoyed this presentation and your talk. In the next week, Saturday, we are going to have
just 1 minute, Sadhana, because we didn't allow questions for this. We'll just 5 minutes. Any questions, please?
Hello, ma'am. Dr. Shruti again.
Yes, Shruti. Yeah. Please.
Just one question, ma'am. It was very clear regarding the objectives and the research question. How much of the research question should reflect in the title of the thesis? Because many a times it becomes difficult if we are thinking about having the PICO also in the title. For example, I had this one thing where I was doing a research study regarding the efficacy of IM versus oral vitamin D supplementation in patients with hypovitaminosis D. And I had 3 groups actually, where I was giving oral sachet, oral weekly, and there was a slight debate with my colleagues and everybody regarding all the information that should be there in the title actually.
Yeah, so there is a difference in making a title for a thesis or a dissertation versus a title for a publication.
Yes, ma'am.
When you are going to submit a manuscript for a publication in a journal, your title can be quite specific.
Yes, ma'am.
It need not be that specific when it is the thesis.
Okay.
You get what I'm saying? So
yes,
you don't have to have all your, almost your entire methodology in your thesis.
In the title. In the title.
Thesis title, it need not be. Because it's different. The title for a thesis, the objective of having a title for a thesis is a little different. It can be a little more broad-based. But when you're submitting for a publication to a journal, they will certainly want it to be a little more specific. So it doesn't happen.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Ma'am, this is Dr. Ashish. With your permission, I'd just like to add, whenever we talk about title, like in research question, you told it's a PICOT. And for title, we use the mnemonic SPICE. It means we should also include setting and the design of study in addition to PICOT. Ma'am, for your opinion in this regard, the difference between research question and the title.
That's what I'm saying. See, if I'm writing a book, my title will be very different. If I'm writing a thesis, my title will be different. This finds this acronym which you are saying for the title, it fits for a publication in a journal, for a manuscript. So if I'm giving a lecture, my title, supposing I'm talking of, let's say, obstructive sleep apnea, I'm writing a book. I might label my book obstructive sleep apnea because it is very broad. If I'm giving a talk on obstructive sleep apnea, my title will be very different. If I'm writing a review on obstructive sleep apnea, my title will be different. So it's not one size that fits all. But these are some guidelines where you want a setting, where you want to have the intervention. It is just a guideline. So it doesn't mean that it is true for each and every, what shall I say, kind of output which you are giving. So a thesis is different from a paper publication. Papers, different papers. Your case review might be, case report might have a different kind of title from randomized controlled clinical trial might have a different title from a systemic review. And that could be very well different from what your thesis title is. Yeah? Does that answer
Yes,
your
ma'am.
question, or you making it?
Ma'am,
more
one more
confusing?
question. This is again Dr. Rashesh. This is
Yes, sir.
regarding, should we first write aim, then only we should talk about objective?
No, see, the thing is, aims are broad.
Yes, ma'am. How to achieve that aim?
Objectives are very, so in a thesis book, generally there will be a section which is called aims and objectives. So you will first write the aim and then you will write the objective. So it will be there, both will be there. And generally aims are written above the objectives.
Ma'am, one question from you.
Yes, Meena. Yeah.
Ma'am, regarding the SMART objectives, the measurable is in terms of the variables. I mean, the measurable is for the variables or for the population also, in which we are going to conduct the study. For the cold compressors only, if I say something like that, how much of the patient or how well was the cold compresses able to achieve the decrease in intensity of pain by 50% within 5 minutes. So can this be like that to make it more precise, that we are not taking the whole general population?
Oh yes, why not? See, first thing is you have already identified what your population is. It's not general population. It's only the people who are having, this acute ankle pain. Okay. Now, if you want, you might want to find out what is the proportion of patients who are getting relief, or you might want to find out what is the degree of pain relief everyone is getting. You understand what I'm saying? So if you are saying proportion of patients, it might be a dichotomous thing. Some people got relief, some people did not get relief. That is the measure which you are looking for. So that, at this point, I can't be telling everything which will fit into a particular, what shall I say, objective. So it is up to you to choose. You might choose to study who is getting relieved, who is not getting relieved. There are only two variables. Either they are relieved or not relieved. Somebody might want to give a, a scale and ask them which, rating scale and find out how much your pain is relieved. Isn't it? So somebody might want to give these two and find out which is more acceptable, which is more easy to, so it could be anything, but you must be sure that what is measurable you are making in your project. It could be anything. It is up to you to choose.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Anything else? Otherwise, you can even send me a WhatsApp message. I'll be happy to answer. Right. So we'll close with this, I think, Sadhana.
Yeah, now we can have questions from the faculty even in the message box, or you can just mail us and we can communicate these to our presenters and resource person. Dr. Geetanjali will be happy to answer all your queries. If you have not answered any question which you feel and can ask madam in future too. And in the next session, that is on Saturday, we are going to have 3 more talks by Dr. Geetanjali, which are equally important and relevant, as I have already messaged them. This will be what do examiners expect in thesis, and then there will be another session on how to write the introduction in a thesis and how to write the review of literature in a thesis. So these are very important relevant topics which we all need to know, and we will have session from Dr. Geetanjali in the coming Saturday. So I think with this word, I request Dr. Veena to propose a vote of thanks.
Hey, what is that to be so formal? You can give vote of thanks, Veena, at the end. We'll just say bye. Already I have taken so much of time. Thank you. Good touching base with all of you. Okay,
we are really overwhelmed, ma'am, by your talk. And for the same reason, on behalf of whole AIIMS Patna MedCell team, I would like to express my gratitude to Dr.
Thank you. My pleasure. My pleasure. Okay, so see you next week at 11:30, right?
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.